Let's start here, Stephen. Which SEC teams, and it could be just one team, it could be a handful, whatever. Which SEC teams do you believe upgraded their roster the most during the first transfer portal window?
I've got six teams I think are winners in the transfer portal from the SEC. I think let's start with Georgia. It's kind of weird to say, well, they only brought in three players, but they're a big winner. Georgia had a specific need at receiver, went out and got Dominic Lovett, Ra Thomas. All of a sudden, I mean, Georgia could have probably won the national championship next year without a ton of help at receiver through the portal. Now they have two guys who could potentially be all SEC caliber talent. And certainly we saw Dominic Lovett do that this year at Missouri. I like Smoke Bowie coming back into. You lose Keely Ringo, you replace him with another high level talent and a guy who's from Georgia. So I think Georgia, despite bringing in three guys, is a big winner here. I love what Kentucky did too. Offense needed a massive overhaul after averaging only 20 points a game. You go out and get a starting quarterback in Devin Leary. You bring in a couple guys on the offensive line, defensive line, corner, and Ray Davis as well at running back. Like, you hit your needs if you're Kentucky. You had some concerns, especially on offense, but losing a potential first-round quarterback, and you answered those. So I think Kentucky, Georgia would be at the top of my list of winners, as well as teams like Auburn, Arkansas, LSU, and Ole Miss. I think when you look at national winners, if I'm doing a top 10, top 15 ranking nationally of the best transfer classes, I think LSU and Auburn are right at the top of that list. I mean, LSU just for the second year just continues to meet its needs by bringing in high-level players at some of these positions, especially in the secondary where they've lost some guys, had some turnover. Auburn just needed a lot of bodies. I mean, they needed offensive linemen, and they got three potential starters from the portal. So I think Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, easily three of the better transfer classes in college football for next year.
So let me ask you this real quick, Stephen. We're crazy down here in the SEC, and that's why I love all these listeners. I mean, heck, it's February 1. They're listening to an SEC football podcast. But should that give folks like Auburn under Hugh Freeze, who their team, we all know, we don't need to kick them while they're down. They were arguably the worst team in the league last year, if not second or third worst team. But with a new staff, by attacking the transfer portal, we still got a big question mark under center. I get that. But is there reason for optimism that maybe we can come in here and be a 8-4, 9-3 team? Not that should be the year one expectation, but it maybe would not be completely stunning either. Where do you see where I'm going with that one?
Yeah, I do. I think there's two different paths with that answer. And the first one is, like, if you take a look at the West and you tear it off, everybody's going to pick LSU and Alabama 1 and 2 in some order. I think 3 through 7, you could get a wide variety of picks for 3 through 7. But I think whoever's 3 and whoever's 7, there's probably not a ton of difference there. And frankly, it might come down to the crossovers. Like, who are some of these teams playing from the East? Like, if Ole Miss has to play Georgia next year, that might make it tough to finish third in the West, and depending on some of those home and roads against the West. So I think just right off the bat, Auburn is already starting with a pretty good base level of talent through years of recruiting. They're not trying to go from 14th in the SEC in roster talent to 7th. They're starting much higher up, and they're trying to build off of that. By no means are they a complete roster or completely empty of needs. I love their transfer class, just top to bottom. The fact that they added 3 caliber offensive linemen. Justin Rogers, I think, is an impact player on the defensive line. Brian Beatty could be a nice 1-2 punch with Jarquez Hunter. It is a little weird to say they have one of the best transfer classes and they didn't meet their needs probably at their two maybe biggest positions of need, which was quarterback and receiver. But that might be where the second transfer portal window comes into effect. So I think if you're looking for reason for optimism at Auburn, you have a lot of change and turnover at some of these programs in the West. once you get past Alabama and LSU. And I think this transfer class is really going to help this team out a lot. So I do think Auburn will be significantly better next year. We'll see what the projected record is at some point because the West is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, no doubt. And they, of course, they got to play Georgia too. They play them every year. But no, one other one I wanted to ask you about real quick on your winners, Arkansas. They did lose a lot of players number wise to the portal, but not a ton of huge impact players. And I believe we've hit on this before. Arkansas, arguably, you can make the case they've done the best with the transfer portal, taking players, a lot of guys unheralded or unproductive at previous stops, and turning them into all SEC, NFL draft pick type players. What do you like about Arkansas? Is it because a lot of these guys come from a lower level, even though they just based on what I've read and seen from them, you know, they were dominant at that level. So is it a mix of that in the fact that Arkansas has already proven that they can take players like this in and elevate them to new heights?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's both things. I think, first of all, Jacoby Criswell is a backup quarterback, but I actually think he's pretty important for Arkansas because you have someone in KJ Jefferson that needs to run, I think, to unlock the offensive potential. And I think if you're Arkansas, you should feel much better about your backup quarterback situation. Seems weird to say that, but I think he's actually a pretty valuable pickup. I love the receiver pickups. You know, Armstrong, Crockett, and Bolden, and the other guy from Hillsdale College. They're all like high measurables. You know, maybe you are stepping up in competition, but I love the talent and the measurables and seeing how that translate. I think if you can just give KJ Jefferson a few targets on offense, I mean, this offense could really go again next year. And then on defense, when you look at each level, I think they're bringing in somebody who can really kind of be an impact player. John Morgan from Pittsburgh, good at getting to the quarterback in some of the limited time that he had. You look at Antonio Greer from South Florida. I thought he was one of the better linebackers in the American Athletic Conference coming into this season before getting hurt. You look at Walcott and Johnson from Baylor. Arkansas needs defensive backs, and they need them in a big way after last season struggling so much to be able to cover the pass. So I just like this class from a position of they had a lot of needs. They met them and they added guys who could be impact players on both sides of the ball. And to your point, I trust Arkansas and this staff to be able to put them in the right position. We'll see, you know, Travis Williams in his first year, I think is a little bit of a mystery, but I have no doubt that Dan Enos, KJ Jefferson, and these receivers will be able to get something going this year.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to get on a roller coaster when you're a little kid. The height requirement. I think you got to be 6'5" to play receiver for Arkansas. That seems to be the new standard there in Fayetteville. And hey, it worked well for them last year, so should work well